conference will now be recorded.
I would like to call to order the Tuesday, June 6th meeting of the Monmouth City Council. Tonight's meeting is focused on Monmouth City Council business. We know that folks are here as to the issue of the possible siting of a microshelter transitional housing site for people experiencing homelessness at Christ Church in Monmouth. Currently, there are no active zoning changes or permitting applications under review to locate such a shelter. Monmouth's current zoning code does not permit such shelters in low-density residential zones. One way that a shelter could be sited would be a request from the property owner, Christ Church, that would be made to either the City Council or the Monmouth Planning Commission to initiate a zone code change. Another way is under an emergency housing shelter proposal that could be approved is under state law passed in 2021 that requires local governments to grant applications to site emergency housing shelters that meet specific criteria. If Monmouth receives a qualified application to site an emergency housing shelter proposal before the bill's expiration, which is currently set for June 30th, the city would review it to see if it meets House Bill 2006 provisions. There is nothing on tonight's agenda related to this proposal. If a proposal does come before the City Council and you would like to be notified, there is a sign-in sheet at the entrance table. In order to get through our council agenda tonight, we have 20 minutes set aside for public comments for items not on the agenda. If comments are related to the microshelter project, I am going to invite those who were not able to attend Saturday's town hall or to speak there to speak. For those who were able to share concerns with the council on Saturday, we ask you to respect that time and submit your additional comments in writing. I would like to ask our city recorder, Phyllis Bowman, for the roll call, please.
Councillor Belts. Here.
That's a bad thing.
Councillor Carey.
Here.
Councillor Lopez.
Present.
Councillor McKeel.
Here.
Councillor Oberst.
Here.
Councillor Salinas Oliveros.
Here.
Mayor Coons.
I am present, and I will lead the flag salute if everyone can stand where able. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first item this evening is the consent calendar, and the item there is our minutes of the council meeting of May 16th. I would welcome any changes or additions to the minutes, if so needed.
I move we approve the consent calendar as they are written.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilor McKeel for the motion and Councilor Salinas Oliveros for the second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you very much. We will move to the public comment section. Although this item is on the agenda later this evening, we'll ask your indulgence, everyone, to take this public comment. We have Steve Summers here to speak about the proposed noise ordinance, which is on our business agenda tonight.
Take your time.
I assume you want me in front of this.
Please, yes, so you can speak into the microphone so those online can hear as well, Steve. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm here to speak to the noise ordinance you are going to be considering tonight. First of all,
We need name and location.
hello?
Yeah, bring it up. and
You can
point it
pull the
right at-
microphone
there
close
you
to
go.
you.
Yeah,
They're very directional.
1, 2,
Yeah.
is that better?
thank you.
Okay. I'm here to speak to the noise ordinance. And first, I want to thank you very much for going ahead and making sure this noise ordinance was created and hopefully passed, because it's definitely needed. I'm also going to challenge you. My challenge to you is for you to assure that this ordinance is proactively enforced. Because if it isn't, it will be worse than if it didn't exist. My particular concern is with motor vehicles that have modified mufflers and are extremely loud, and they were made so that way intentionally, and they cruise neighborhoods, and they're easy to spot. They're easy to hear because I live on Alberta Avenue, and I can hear them down on the S curves. And then if they come through your neighborhood, which probably you've all experienced that, it is very unpleasant. And however, unless that ordinance is, like I say, proactively enforced by Monmouth Police Department, and unless the officers are encouraged to enforce it by the chief, and unless you make it a priority for it to be enforced, it's worthless. And so again, I thank you very much, and I'm hopeful. I'm a bit pessimistic, but I'm hopeful that this noise, will subside. I think if it is, taken seriously, it won't take long before these people find out that it is real and that it will be enforced. So, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you very much.
All right. We also had a public comment that was submitted to our city recorder, Phyllis Bowman. And Phyllis, if you can read that into the record for us, please.
We received a public comment from Lee Mysek. He said the flags with the iconography of the chevron triangles were representative of racism and pedophilia. He said the city should not support an agenda like that, and he is planning on writing to the mayor as well.
Right. Thank you. The public comments that we have here in front of us this evening, I have some folks I do not believe were able to speak to us on Saturday, so we'll entertain those this evening. Pam Burkhalter, would you please come to it's going to be kind of tight getting up there, and introduce yourself and where you reside. And yeah, Zach, thanks. I'll just speak in the mic. Thank you. And to be ready, Michelle Umbreras after that.
Hi, I'm Pam Burkhalter, and I live on Ackerman and Stadium. And my question, well, I have more than one, but the first one is the city of Salem is paying not Christchurch, Church of the Park, $1,600 per person per month for the people in their shelter on Center Street. And my question to you is, when the grant money runs out, who's going to pay the $1,600 per month per person in the shelter if they put it in? That's my question. And I know you can't answer it, but please take that away and think about it, because That's an issue that we all know that we have. Also, I'm going to forget what I was going to say. I have a real concern, and I think everybody in the community does, for the people that are with PCL. They have been in our neighborhoods for decades now. They move about our city freely. They don't have to worry about anybody. They don't have to be concerned that somebody's going to come up to them and ask them for money. And I've actually had a conversation with PCL and Ron Wilson that their concerns are that if they are asked for money, they're very generous people. They'll give them everything they have in their wallet. And let's just say somebody who has drugs walks up to somebody that's with PCL and says, you want to try this? It'll make your life great. What if they do? This is wrong. It is just so wrong to put so many people at risk. Please think about all of these items. One more question for zoning, and that is Christ Church, the lots that have Christ Church there, are they zoned for play structures? There are already play structures there, and I'm just wondering if they are. Do you know, sir? You don't know? Okay.
Okay. Our city attorney, Lane Shetterly, I think,
Okay.
can
But,
answer.
well, I
Play structures are not zoning issues.
Yeah, I'd want to look at the planning, the development code and the zoning on the property. And the
Okay.
conditional use under which the church is established. So I can't answer that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Lumbreras and then Carol Bunsey.
Good evening. Excuse me. My name is Michelle Lumbreras. I've lived in Monmouth since 1970. And my parents have lived here as well. And we live on Walnut Drive. Both my parents and myself in different houses. I want to let you know that I know that we are getting out ahead of this, but I wanted to give you some food for thought. And by that, I want to tell you a little story. My husband got a call yesterday from an old friend from high school, and she said, my sister is homeless, and I thought that maybe you were in the Salem area, and she happens to be in Monmouth, and I wondered if maybe you could go check on her. And Alex said, well, and this is my husband, Alex, yes, I live in Monmouth, and I would be happy to check on her. And we made arrangements to meet with her at the park in Monmouth at Main Street Park. And we started talking to her about what her immediate needs were. She was living in a van. After a little while, I left to go run a little errand, and I left my husband there talking to her. When I got back, she said, hey, I know Sister Tanner, is what she called her. And I said, of course you do. Like, you know, everybody knows Sister Tanner. She's such a sweetheart. And she goes, I said, how do you know her? She goes, I'm wearing her daughter's dress. I said, well, that's awesome. And I said, how did you connect with Sister Tanner? She goes, that wonderful church on the corner, the white one. They let me take a shower. They gave me some food. They gave me a towel, which I didn't have. There were volunteers there. I got connected with them through there. I talked to some missionaries. I'm doing Bible study now. And we said, that's wonderful. We were so happy that there was a resource for her to go to and that she could find it fairly easily. She also, long story short, found access. They helped her find access to county help, and she got lots of good news yesterday in regards to all of that. I tell you that story because I want to say that's how Monmouth works. And when I look at the point in time demographics, and I hear people online say, gee, I thought our town used to be really generous and nice people, you know? But now, because they're upset about this 40-bed shelter, they're obviously not very generous, kind people. And I want to say there's a reason why that we have such a low amount in this town. It's because people do have generous hearts. However, I do believe that there is a need for further homeless shelter facilities. For example, for Miss Sarah, there,
Can you wrap it up?
I can, sure I can. There is a need for smaller shelters that people can go to and that community members know where they are and how to help people. I feel like the 40-bed shelter is way in over our head for our community, and I would be sad to see the fallout from that. I appreciate you listening to me, and I appreciate the difficult situation you're in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Carol and then Ellison Hirsch.
I live on West Main in Monmouth, and this association is newly started. And as you're looking through our goals, let me explain how it came about. Obviously, people in the neighborhood were concerned about the proposed micro shelter. We've got a variety of folks in that neighborhood, lots of different ways of approaching their concerns. A group of neighbors got together, and one of the things that we identified that almost everyone has in common in these groups is that we feel like there's been a lack of transparency in terms of what is going on, and that our neighborhood didn't have much of a voice in terms of a major change to what's happening to us. And so we set up the neighborhood association. We're just in the beginning. And as we know from checking, Monmouth doesn't have those yet. And so there's not rules around it. So what we did is we looked at other small towns and how they put these together. We set up some goals. We've got a steering committee. We don't have a president yet, but I mean, we've only been in operation for maybe a week. So we're still working on that. But we also talked to, any of you want the information, to Irma Coleman, who is the coordinator of the neighborhood associations in Salem. They've had some of them for 50 years. They've got 20 of them. Obviously, Monmouth wouldn't need that. But we're hoping that other neighborhoods will look at this, because we feel like if there's a group that wants to look at better transparency, better communication, that we need a group that can address that with the city. And in the whole process, we've gotten to know our neighbors better, and we're looking at, once we've worked with this initial issue, there's other things that we can look at in terms of community. So that's pretty much it. We'll be in contact, and certainly we're willing to work with the city in terms of setting up some guidelines. I mean, they're different everywhere, but we did what we could, and this is where one of our groups is going right now, one of the ways that we're addressing our concerns. Thank you.
Thank
Carol.
you.
Allison and then Elaine Junkel.
Hi. Ooh, sorry. I'm Allison Hirsch. I've lived on Monmouth, or in Monmouth, for over 20 years on Walnut Drive. I've raised my boys here, and I can't believe that you're doing this to our city. But I read your notes, and it says that Monmouth was a founding member of the Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance of Marion and Polk counties. So how can you be impartial about this? You told us at the Saturday meeting that you have to be impartial. How can you be impartial if you're part of the alliance? It doesn't make sense. Thank you.
Elaine and then Thomas Farrell.
Hi, my name's Elaine Junkel, and my husband and I live on College Street South. And I was there Saturday, and I listened to what everyone said about the shelter. And I think they brought up so many reasons that the shelter would not be appropriate, especially in that location. And I think everybody kind of realizes that, but I wanted to bring up a couple of other things that weren't discussed too much. One is that I believe his name was Mr. Stump that deeded the property to the church. I just wonder if the church has even considered how he would feel about this when it was written in the deed that it was only for a church building or possibly 2 small homes. I can't imagine that he would want something that would so negatively impact the neighborhood that he lived in and knew those neighbors. I just can't believe that the church has really fully thought that through, as well as the effects which we discussed in length, what it's going to have not just on that neighborhood, but on the whole town. Because we know how this works. We've seen it in Salem. We've seen it in Corvallis. We see it in Portland. Unfortunately, most of these people have mental health problems and addictions. And, I'm sure every one of these people wants to help them as well as the others, but there needs to be some screening process that we know, okay, do they have addictions? They need more intense help. Do they have mental illness? They need more intense help. I think that as a community, we would totally be behind helping these people that we can help. But we need to be realistic. It's going to take a whole lot more to help these people that are so seriously affected. And I have to tell you, I know addictions from people very close to me. I've known it for years, and I know that enabling them does not help their addictions. And giving them a place to crash, basically, and food and, making their addictions comfortable, I'm sorry, but it has to be really uncomfortable before they are motivated to get out of their addictions. And I just see that these kind of shelters don't, 90 days is not even long enough, even if you try. And so I don't think they're being realistic. And every 90 days, those people will be released from the place they have to leave. And then where do they go? I know my time is up, but that is an important point. Every 90 days, we get a new group. And if they're not healed, which how many people here think they're going to be healed in 90 days? They're going to be wandering around our town. So I guess I don't need to say anymore.
Elaine.
Thank you. Thank you, Elaine.
And the last person that we did not hear from on Saturday, Thomas Farrell. No? Tom Farrell? Oh, sorry. Sorry, I'll speak up. That's my fault. I'm sorry I didn't speak louder. Thank you, Tom. And
Make sure you can hear me, okay? Okay, my name is Thomas Farrell, and I live on Stadium Drive, diagonally across from the proposed site of the micro shelter. Now, the big question for me is security. You've got a lot of kids around, and you've got a lot of the elderly around. I'm one of them, okay? I'm 75. And all too many times, from what you read, The targets for homeless people are young people and old people. What kind of security, actual security, is going to be provided at this site? Is it going to be an independent security agency that also monitors their movements offsite as well? I mean, they're not constructing a prison. These people can come and go as they will, I guess, unless there's a curfew. And so no one will know who these people are exactly, and it makes it unsafe because if they have mental health issues, many bad things can happen if they're not constantly monitored. Okay? So it has to do with safety and security, and we need to know what's being put in place for that. Another problem is the people who live in the immediate vicinity of this thing. I'm diagonally across from it. It's going to have a major impact on the retail value of our properties. When you get to my age, you start thinking, well, maybe, you know, move into something more affordable because I've got my security in my house. Well, that can go down real quick because there's nobody coming through looking to move in to a micro shelter. So a financial burden to those in the immediate vicinity, especially when they're my age, is something that I doubt seriously has been taken into consideration. Okay, that's it. And I thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And that concludes our submitted comments from folks who did not have an opportunity Saturday. We appreciate you all coming. And now we are going to move into our regular meeting agenda, which mostly consists of a lot of motions, and we'll try and get through them quickly. First of all, I will see Janet. She's here. Oh, yes, sorry. I'm sorry. First of all, our first item, we'll get this one out of the way. We have an OLCC license application before us this evening, and Sergeant Strack is online to introduce us to that topic.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
We can.
Perfect. Madam Mayor, members of City Council, thanks for having me today. I know you guys have a lot on your agenda, so I'm going to make this pretty brief for you. Coyotes Tacos is looking for a limited on-site premise liquor application. And my job was to do a background check on the owners of the business. And since it's a long-standing business, I did a background check on the business itself, just to make sure there's no issues that could arise from permitting this application. I did the background checks, and thankfully there was no concerns identified with the business or any of the owners involved with that business. So in front of you, you guys have the application and your three options to either recommend in favor, recommend against the approval, or make no recommendations at all. And on the bottom of the sheet, you have the staff's recommendation for you.
All right, thank you. Any questions?
I'm just going to move to send OLCC a recommendation in favor of approving the liquor license for Coyotes Tacos.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor McKeel for the motion and Councillor Lopez for the second. Seeing no discussion, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And any opposed? All right, thank you for that. Thank you, Sergeant Strack, for doing that.
Thank you very
work
much.
for us.
Thank you.
Sure. That was Sergeant Michael Strack from our Monmouth Police Department presenting that report.
He's in the corner there.
Our City Finance Director, Janet Chenard, for how many more days is joining us?
And negative
How many
hours. But my last budget meeting, perhaps, depending on how everybody feels about the budget.
Yeah, depending on that. All right, so again, we go through a series um, of pieces to approving and adopting our 2023-2024 budget. Our budget committee did meet. We had some really great and strong discussions about some of these issues, and really appreciate that engagement and the work of Janet and her team. Our first item up is a resolution on the use of state revenue sharing. So I will let Janet give the staff report, and then we will open a public hearing.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, honorable council members. So with the revenue sharing, the state revenue sharing, as you know, we have three options that we may choose. And this year, we're projecting about $386,000 in state revenue sharing funds for the general fund and about $883,000 for our street fund from the highway tax. And so we can either keep the money for the general fund, which will allow us to have a balanced budget in the general fund, or we can return those monies to the state, in which case we would have to find other resources in order to provide the basic service level that we've projected. And we can also use that, the non-gas tax state revenue, so the $386,000 can be used as an offset to reduce property taxes. But again, if we did that, we would have to find that funding elsewhere or reduce our expenditure budget or some combination thereof. And with that, I would welcome any questions.
Any council questions regarding that?
Knowing the answer already. So if we just give the money back to the state, it's just gone, right? Yeah.
Well, they spend it on other expenditures.
And if we don't,
Yeah.
if we don't act in the affirmative, that we would like to hang on to this, it just goes back.
Correct. And we have to certify every year, and that's why we go through this public hearing process as well as this official acceptance of it. Every year, they want us to thoughtfully consider whether or not we need the money.
Councilor Lopez and then Councilor Carey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you very much, Ms. Schnard. We're going to miss you when you're not present for these. My question is about option 3, use the non-gas tax state revenue sharing monies as an offset to property tax levies. And again, like Councilor Oberst, I'm sure that I've heard the answer before, but it's been a year. So if we elected to do that, what would the implications be? So it offset property tax. That sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's another side, I'm sure.
Correct. So if we reduce our property taxes in order to fill the gap using the state revenue sharing, then we still are less $386,000 revenue in our budget. So again, we would have to, it would no longer be a balanced budget. We would have to cut $386,000 in expenditures or find some other revenue source when there's already a revenue source there from the property taxes that has been approved.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And again, I know the answer, but I'm going to pop in. The budget committee discussed this and they recommended.
They recommended that we accept the, yes, it was approved by the budget committee and forwarded to the council for approval.
Thank you. And Councilor Carey, and then we'll
Just remind
open
us,
the hearing.
that to return it would mean like pennies savings to the general property.
For the property tax, yeah, for individual property tax holders.
Infinitesimal.
It's very small amount. Yes.
So remind us then that the revenue streams that the state shares with us.
So the state shares with us a liquor tax revenue. They share with us a cigarette tax revenue, and then they have a formula liquor tax quarterly revenue sharing that it's based on liquor sales as well, but it's a special formula. So that's called the true state revenue sharing is that formula based liquor tax. And then we also have a marijuana tax that's not a very big portion from the state, but we do have a local marijuana tax that's not included in that number.
And that flows into the street fund is gas tax.
Correct.
Yeah, so we have basically sin taxes in gas.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which could be a syntax if you're
Well,
climate, you know,
My
just,
opinion.
I biked here, I'm just saying.
yeah,
Riding the trolley.
just for clarity purposes. Thank you.
True.
Do we still have the 911 revenue sharing from the state?
We don't, no, because we don't have a dispatch service.
Oh,
but
that's right. It's
No,
running it to
right.
Salem now.
right.
All right. And at this time then, I will open the public hearing on the matter of the resolution to use state revenue sharing. Is there any public comment regarding this? Janet will share the microphone. All right. Seeing none, close the public hearing and consideration by the council. And yeah, Councilor Oberst, if you can speak in the microphone. I know you're loud, but again, folks online
I try.
and for the recording, it's helpful.
Would you accept the motion, Madam Mayor?
Please.
Move approval of resolution 1963 declaring the city's intention to receive state revenues in fiscal year 24.
I'll second. Oh, I will defer to Counselor Belts.
Thank you. I will
Councilor
thank Councilor Oberst for the motion and Councilor Belts for the second. And seeing no impetus for discussion, Phyllis, could you please do the roll call on resolution number 1960?
Counselor Oberst,
Yes.
Counselor McKeel,
Yes.
Counselor Carey,
Aye.
Counselor Lopez,
Aye.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros,
Aye.
Counselor Belts.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
It matches. Thank you very much. All right. And now moving on to a lengthier, I think, item of business. And that, in fact, is adopting the fiscal year 2023-24 budget and the capital improvement plan, which again got a thorough hearing from our budget committee. I'll entertain the staff report and questions from the council, and then we'll open for public comment.
Okay, thanks again. And I will note a small correction, a Scribner correction in the subject of the staff report. It should be resolution number 1964. The challenges of numbering 800 resolutions in one night. But so 1964 was a good year. But it was also a good resolution, we hope. And it includes a lot of great things from recommended by your city manager as your budget officer and supported by the department heads and other staff. The budget that we are presenting is a balanced budget. It was approved by the budget committee after deliberation and public hearing. And so we will hold another public hearing tonight, but just to refresh you on some of the initiatives that are included in your budget this year, we have a total budget amount that is $59 million amount, which apparently I never put in here. Oh, no, it's 59. There it is. $59,628,774. And of that, about 12.5 million is capital improvement projects in the first year of the capital improvement plan of the 5-year plan. The highlights include wage increases for your very capable staff, of whom I'm very proud, not just the finance department, but all of those other departments actually doing the good work in the city. And your finance department, of course, supports that. And the COLA this year is 4%. However, I will remind you that that is less than what the CPI that we designated a few years ago would have indicated, which was actually in the range of, I want to say, 5.7%. So this is the second year where we've taken a 4% COLA to kind of mirror what the union contracts also reflect and what they were, what they negotiated. So in the face of inflation, it's not an undue amount, but it is obviously still an increase in costs. But we also are recruitment challenged. And so we hope that you will support that. So the MPOA group will get a 4% COLA and the IBEW group will get a 3.5% COLA under their respective contracts. We're going to be proposing a little bit later on some utility rate increases. Those rate increases are based on capital projects work largely in the 4 utility funds. And those are relatively small increases in order to keep a smooth, more constant revenue source so that we don't have to have larger increases in future years. So we're looking at 2% in the power and light and sewer funds respectively, a 5.5% in the water fund, and a 5%, which sounds like a lot in the stormwater fund, but is really 66 cents for most residential customers. And I'll talk a bit more about those when we do the rate resolutions. And so then I just wanted to again highlight that we are trying to do our best to accomplish some one-time large projects with our American Rescue Plan Act grant allocation. And we are also continuing to leverage our urban renewal monies as well in order to get some longer term projects that we've had on the books for a while accomplished so that we can continue a smooth trajectory with our projections. As far as FTE, our full-time equivalent personnel, the proposals include an increase of 0.325 FTE in the community services officer position in our police department. That brings a part-time role to full-time, and there has been a growing demand for that, as you heard in the budget committee discussions and deliberations. There was a previously approved operations manager position in Monmouth Power and Light, and that has been proposed to be converted to a general foreman position, which is more in keeping with the duties that were perceived to be needed in that department. Also, because of the fact that it would have to be part of the union, it seemed like a better fit for that. We have for many, many years been talking about the need to centralize human resources for compliance purposes from our very capable but highly overburdened department heads and our city manager as our HR manager. There is just a lot of skill sets in a human resources position that are not, frankly, being met as ably as they need to be. And that is one piece. And then the role that we're contemplating for that is as assistant city manager position, because also we would envision that position managing contracts for facility and fleet management in order to, again, more centralize our vehicle and our facilities and maintain that infrastructure in accordance with council goals. So that's a bit of a unicorn position, we recognize. But we're hoping that that will be something that we can make work, and also it will serve to potentially maybe do some of the risk management work that has fallen to your finance director to do, which, you know, I like to think she was doing an okay job of it, but I would rather have the next finance director not have that additional thing on her plate. And then the last actually 3 positions. We're for Public Works, we're looking at 2 utility technicians, one for to replace a part-time temporary employee in the parks, and then one that would be shared, but primarily for stormwater, our new utility. And that position would be about 50% dedicated to stormwater, 30 and 20 respectively to street and sewer funds. And so that would be under the supervision of Russ Cooper, your Public Works Director, who has also talked about these positions for some time. Lastly, your Senior Center Director, it's being contemplated to increase her to full-time, which is a relatively small dollar amount, 0.125 FTE. But again, we're seeing with the growing population and the growing aging population, even though it is not just a senior center, it's a senior community center, we are seeing the need for programming and support that would definitely make a full-time position very, very busy. And so those are kind of the highlights, and I would take any questions you have, especially if you've had a chance to review the budget more thoroughly since the budget committee meetings.
Quick question on the human resources aspect, and that is my understanding right now, each department head is its own HR person, despite the fact that I don't think any of them have extensive HR training, which, as you indicated, has become an extremely
Sensitive, is that the word you're looking for?
Specialized.
no, I was going to say technical,
Yeah.
technical
Technical.
and sensitive. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Mhm.
And so it really does make sense to have one person taking all of those duties, and that will free up the time of those department heads to manage their departments because they're not having to deal with the HR part anymore. So
With the skill sets that they
yeah,
are
right.
trained
that,
in.
that they don't have. Right. So, yeah, if I've got that right, I'm very supportive of that HR piece. As I mentioned during budget, I found myself when I was in Cisa's seat being the HR manager with even less training than the department's heads have. So I'm glad to see.
I've had training and I wouldn't want to do that. Marty?
May I just add a comment to, I think that what we're envisioning is that there are two things that are needed on the HR function front. One is not so much that the departments wouldn't be performing that function anymore, but they need support and
Sure.
for centralizing help with recruitments when we have vacancies. And we just had a conversation this week as a department head group about onboarding employees and making sure that that also helps with retention.
Mhm.
And then part two of this is also, I mean, there are some central functions that also assist with bargaining with our unions and contractual
Sure.
issues.
Yeah.
So
That's the stuff I was talking about.
yeah, this is the kind of support that I
Right.
think our departments are needing.
Very good. Very good.
Other questions of, go ahead, Councillor Salinas Oliveros and Councillor Carey.
I just wanted, for the record, why the general foreman position, that it was switched to that. And I think there was a great example that was given during the budget meeting, having to do with the ice storm and, and union and why it's important to have the general foreman position. If you wouldn't mind kind of just explaining that for the record.
Sure, sure. So essentially, the general foreman would have the line capabilities in addition to helping the director of the department do some operational and scheduling management. And so those two functions are very critical to a small department in particular when we have been understaffed all year. Luckily, we are now fully staffed, but that is a pretty critical element to it. And I don't know, Marty, if you want to add to that.
I have nothing to add.
I was just going to say, is it also overtime that there's some form that cannot be paid overtime because of union and the general foreman can? Am I missing?
The general foreman probably would be overtime eligible for functions where they are performing the line functions.
Councillor Carey?
Just because we have some additional people in the room tonight, just a bit of a clarification on the pay increases, the COLA increases and so on. Our police union has negotiated that rate. Our employees, both in Power and Light and then in Public Works that are represented by IBEW, have negotiated a rate. And so we're trying to blend the rate of our non-represented people like you and, the city manager
And clerical staff too.
clerical staff,
Mhm.
department heads and so on, trying to make that an even deal. And so this is largely negotiated through union negotiations. So that's an explanation, I guess, if people say, I didn't get a 4% raise. Well, you weren't represented by IBEW either, so.
Right. And I will say, when I look at my listserv, 4% is very low relative to what most non-represented groups are getting. Certainly the lowest that I saw was 5%, and many other agencies are giving higher rates. So that does potentially impact our ability to be competitive. However, we did have a classification and compensation review for our non-represented staff just like 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. And so we're hoping that we're still fairly competitive.
Any other questions? At this time, I will open the public hearing regarding the adoption of the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget and capital improvement plan. So if anyone has questions, would like to come up and identify yourself. All right. Seeing none, we'll close that public hearing. And the second one, as you mentioned, we had one during the budget committee as well. And council deliberations. Yes, Councillor McKeel.
You first,
just
I was going to
going
offer
to-
a motion.
I was going to do it with as well, but I've already done one, so go ahead.
Okay. If there are no other comments, Madam Mayor, I move approval of resolution number 1964, adopting the budget, making appropriations, levying valorum taxes of $387,180, and adopting the capital improvement plan for the 2023-2024 fiscal year.
Thank you. And I'll just let their ad valorem tax.
Ad valorem.
And I'll second that with that improvement.
With ad included. All right. All right. Thank you. So discussion. Councillor Carey.
This budget, the document that we're considering, has gone through a long process, careful preparation by Janet and the department heads and the city manager. And it's followed the procedures that we have followed sort of in the past. And I will be voting in favor of it because we have done it as we have always done it, and we have sort of always come out on the other side. However, I'm going to challenge the council and our staff, and when we come back to our pre-budget meeting next year, we treat the general fund budget differently than we treat our enterprise fund budgets. Because we're going to increase rates in 4 of our different enterprise departments that is needed because of infrastructure things, higher cost of electricity. It's a legitimate cost increase that needs to be done. The way we fund that is through rate increases. Now contrast that with the general fund. General fund, the money we get from that, and this is old hat to you guys, but it's for the record. We get that from our property taxes. We get that in the main. The property taxes, our
Franchise
fees, and then departmental chargebacks. In other words, each department benefits from the operation of the city, finance and administration, and other things. So we charge those departments funds. That is the only real continuing source of revenue that we have of a meaningful nature, that we have that funds the general fund. Now, if we follow the general fund in our operating budget, and Janet, now this is not new to Janet because her and I have been through this nearly every year, but more recently, if we follow our budget as it is planned, we're going to spend $264,000 more than we have in revenue. And we'll make that up with our reserves that we have maintained. So in effect, so our budget is balanced. But if we look at the 5-year plan, if we look at our out budget, which has got, it's a little bit of voodoo math. You've got to know how everything works, and it's a pretty good indicator.
We don't like calling it voodoo.
I know, but you wonder.
Math, yeah, that-
And 4 out of the next 5 of the 5 years we're considering, we're in the red. And at the end of 5 years, we're $1 million in the red, meaning that we can't fund the services in our general fund with the revenues that we have based on the expenses that we're predicting. Now, we have always, and I'm reminding, and this is for the folks in the audience and online, we have always been very conservative in how we project our revenue. So we often exceed our revenue. We're pretty conservative generous in how we estimate our expenses. So we often and always actually come underneath what we think we're going to spend. So therefore, we never have a full-blown deficit. Darn close, but not all the way. That can't last, in my opinion, because the revenue streams are flat almost, and our expenses are going up, I mean, we've all seen that, not inflationary, the COLA increases for our personnel, which is a large part of it. So what I'm hoping we can do as a budget committee next year, as council to direct the budget committee, is to ask the administration to come back with a balanced operating budget. So we're going to spend the amount of money that we bring in and without going into our reserves, but come with what I would consider ad alternates, things that we need to have. And then we can, with our eyes open, with a careful look at the value of each of those, then we can make the decision that we would like to go ahead and fund that. Even though it's a bit of a risk, it's worth it to do that. We need, if this were a year forward and we decided to do this, we would be weighing whether or not we need, a person who could manage our automobile fleet, our vehicle fleet, and maintain our human resources functions. And we would deliberate that, and we would debate that, and we would say, yes, we do. And so how are we going to manage? How much are we going to pull from reserves? How much are we going to pare elsewhere? That's not a motion, but it's something that I think that we just need to all build in. We can't keep doing what we're doing. If you look at the bottom, we're projecting 15% fund balance, which is our requirement at the end of next year, assuming that goes according to plan, 16 the year after, and then we get into negative funds beyond that. Now, we'll save money, we'll spend less, maybe get a little more, but that's happening all around the state where that is suddenly running out. And I just think we need to be a little more aggressive in how we look at and analyze our general fund budget. The rest of them, we go through that and I think we're good there. But that's my rant. That's my firmly held belief that we need, we've been talking about this for 7 or 8 years, and we need to do something about it.
And always somehow it comes out okay.
I know it does.
I get
I
that.
know
No, our state, like you say, reliance on property taxes and that system is broken. Counselor Obers, then Counselor Lopez, please.
And I think I'd like to, at some level, echo John's concern about the general fund shortfall. And in particular, it's, we get this budget that has this shortfall built in, and it's really hard to go through and pick out things that would get rid of that shortfall because it's a little bit here and it's a little bit there. Whereas if we came in with a budget that's, in the black, zero, negative number, then we can very specifically, thoughtfully, and specifically, pick those things that we as a budget committee, 7 residents, 7 council members, just to make clear what that committee is, come together and say, yes, those things are important enough that we're willing to have those red numbers and recognize that. And Janet won't be managing the numbers anymore, but we have a very capable person coming in who will proceed to say, yeah, we'll take those red numbers because at the end of the day, we're going to overraise and underspend and we'll be good the way we have been.
And I think it's important to remind that we didn't in January get a budget that was out of balance.
All right.
Now, right, we're talking about future. As Councilor Carey mentioned, we're looking ahead.
Right.
And so I don't think in my experience, we've ever been presented with a budget that said, here, this is balanced. But if you might be in the red. So I just want to make sure we're clear. We are looking at projections that are based
Sure.
on a
And so
lot of
maybe
assumptions.
January is not the inflection point. Maybe the January is a good starting point, but when we come together as a budget committee, start from zero.
I think Councillor Carey's point about let's talk philosophy about that
Right. Yeah.
in January. We are not going to be presented either with Janet or from Susie Marston a budget at all in January. So Councillor Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I offer my thanks as well, to your correction earlier. I'm a little sneezy today, so I appreciate that. Welcome future corrections if there is an opportunity. I'd like to address the comments by my fellow councilors. And I think, I agree in spirit. However, I believe that we're calling something that it's not. And so, we are passing a balanced budget. We're maintaining the reserves that we're maintaining, and we're getting really uncomfortable. And I understand why, really uncomfortable about what we're calling a 5-year budget. Those lines are not a 5-year budget. So what one would call those more accurately is a pro forma. So it carries everything that we've got, assuming no changes, and carries it forward. We know that there are radical changes in the amount that we've spent, especially in our CIP. There's radical changes in the amount that we bring in, not necessarily with those base funding levels, that 3% property tax increase, but there's future potential radical changes as the city continues to expand and continues to add taxable properties and build taxable properties. So those base levels don't change, but the pro forma just carries exact numbers and increases them essentially by a percentage over future years. Those percentages often interact with each other. That's why you get odd anomalies like going from 15% up to 16% down to the red, right? But it's not a budget per se. Budgets are created with intent. They're created with assessing needs, and all this does is it carries numbers forward. So while I agree with you that we would be benefited by coming into it with a little bit of a different view looking forward, that we would say, establish a baseline service level as we are attempting to do in our enterprise funds, which I love the comparison, and then looking at, the additional, dire needs, like to haves, could haves, and then with an intentional process, piecing it forward. I would like to remind you that when we come to January, I see this process is taking quite a bit of additional council energy and resources. I'm here for it, but I want to make it clear what we're talking about, right? We're talking about taking a pro forma and then converting it, or at least a portion of it, when we're midstream through a current budget, into something that's more meaningful. I'm all about it, but it's gonna take energy. And I want to walk into it with my eyes open about really the kind of commitment levels that we're talking about. So I'm here for it, and I look forward to the discussions. That concludes.
Janet looks forward to retiring and watching.
Yeah,
And I will watch online with bated breath.
I'm like looking over, I keep
And
looking
remain
over at
silent.
Janet, and she's like, thank goodness.
We're going to get a postcard in January from Janet.
Yeah.
Wish you were here.
She's at some bike race in Italy again.
Yeah.
The pro forma.
All right, additional comments, observations? I see none. Phil?
Madam Mayor, before you continue, I meant to highlight one other aspect, which I hope you read in your staff report, but I did mean to, you'll notice that the expenditure level is identical to what was approved by the Budget Committee. However, there were some adjustments made for GASB 96 and GASB 87, the real reason I'm retiring.
And what is GASB?
Government Accounting Standards Board, or as No, I'm not
No,
gonna,
we're
I'm not
not
gonna
going-
quote Mike Gregory on.
We're not going to quote Mike Gregory on that.
Um, so, anyway, yes, so that has to do with, SPITA's subscription-based information technology arrangements, which are basically software agreements.
Licenses.
And so, yes, and so we already had budgeted for them and have been for many years in our materials and services lines in our departments. But GASB 96 requires us to treat it as a debt service payment with an implicit interest rate. And so we have to create categories in some of our funds that were not there. So this was an opportune time to do that when we were already doing noticing for the budget. And so that is built in, but basically it's just a shifting. You'll see some shifting. And the other item that I shifted was related to revenues, because one of the budget committee members highlighted that the transfer for the payment by Mynet of their first interest payment on their consolidated loan was not reflected in the transfers in. So I moved it to the transfers in, but I just adjusted the net revenue that would have been received from rates because it reduced it. And that's a conservative way to budget revenue, to reduce it.
So the MINO is the promissory note that we talked about earlier?
Correct.
Okay. So the MINET's promised to pay back all the money they borrowed from us in their first 15 years.
Correct.
Now
Ish.
they're paying 100% of their bills.
100% and with 3% interest, which was really good up until a year ago.
That's so good.
Thank you. And pointing out that the difference between what the budget committee recommends we adopt and we adopt, that is possible under Oregon budget law to make those kind of changes as long as they do not exceed 10% of the budget that was approved by the
In
budget.
each fund, yes.
In each fund. So noticing that is, we are well within that to do that. So. All right, now I see nothing else. So I will ask Phyllis to take the roll call on on resolution number 1964, a resolution adopting the budget, making appropriations, leveling ad valorem taxes, and adopting the capital improvement plan for the 2023-24 fiscal year.
Counselor Belts,
Aye.
Counselor Carey,
Aye.
Counselor McKeel,
Yes.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros,
Aye.
Counselor Oberst,
Absolutely. Yes.
Counselor Lopez.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you so much. And we'll try and get through these next few a little more quickly. So we will now consider a resolution which would adopt the new electric rates as mentioned. And everyone got a chance to meet the new Power and Light Superintendent. Our Wade Carey is joining us, and so gets to be here to see his first budget, and he gets to take all the calls about the rate change. So, all right, he's ready. Thank you, Janet.
Okay, well, the good news is it is only 2%. And that was, that number was derived based on the 5-year pro forma that was created for the Power and Light Fund. And yes, we used to call it a pro forma in a past life, but 5-year plans seem to somehow arise. And so at 2%, that does create a balanced budget in fiscal 24 and allows for a small but regular increase over the course of the next 5 years. And as this is always of interest, I wanted to let you know that the monthly rate change on a typical Monmouth home or apartment would be an increase of about $1.89 per month on average. And so that is the main thing. You've heard me say what it's for. It's for the cost of increasing personnel as well as capital projects, and allows us to maintain our prudent levels according to the fiscal policy of 25% reserves. And with that, I would take questions.
I don't think we even need to ask how that rate compares to the other utilities that are run by private shareholders in our areas. So,
I don't know.
Thank you. Carol, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have a question, but as soon as we are raising rates, I just want to, I guess for the record, let people know that the city of Monmouth with utilities is very active about helping people who can't hit their or meet their utility. We now have, is it consistently when utility bills are due, there's somebody in the office?
Yes, with the Family Resource, Family Community Outreach
Resource Center.
is present and was today for today was unfortunately the shut-off day, and we had a very high number relative to what we've had in recent months. And but Jesus, from who you met at a recent council meeting, was there from 9 until 3 and had a steady stream of customers. And we're really, I especially want to highlight that we recently moved our funding over from Community Action to the Family Resource Center, and they've been making even better use of it as far as making sure that customers will get some support. And we raised the threshold on the dollar amount that they can get in support for each time they're assisted. So it is a very, very nice partnership that is really, I think, appreciated by and is right there, as you pointed out.
That's really great. I'm just impressed with the city with that. I mean, it's not a much of a rate increase, $1.89. However, I remember $1.89 in my budget was going to tax me pretty heavily. So thank you. I think that's great. Very good problem solving.
Right? Other questions, or there is a motion?
I move approval of Resolution 1965, establishing new electric rates and repealing Resolution 1943.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Oberst for the motion, Councilor Salinas Oliveros for the second. Any discussion? All right, Phyllis.
Counselor McKeel,
Yes.
Counselor Lopez,
Aye.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros,
Aye.
Counselor Oberst,
Yes.
Counselor Belts,
Yes.
Counselor Carey.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
All right, and I just want to, the resolution shall be effective as of May 15th, 2023.
That is correct.
And that is because
our we bill from the 15th to the 15th of the month, and so your July 1st bill will be reflecting the rate increase, but it's for the service period of the May 15th to June 15th.
all right, and now we'll just move right on through, as maybe that was a sewer joke. I don't know. Sewer rates. Please.
Nicely done, Madam Mayor.
Oh. Okay. Moving to page 31 of your packet, because there are several schedules on the electric resolution.
There's even math in there.
Right? Okay, so page 31, we have, I'm asking you to look at resolution number 1966, which is for the sewer rates, a similar story, 2%. However, I'll note that the sewer fund has not had a rate increase in many, many years, not since before my time. In fact, you can tell by the repealing of the resolution number 1834 that it has been many a year since we had a sewer rate increase. And we are seeing some very significant sewer projects coming down the tunnel, and that is the primary driver of it. So we in fact will probably be issuing debt in the next 2 to 3 years, which you'll see in your 5-year plan, 5-year pro forma. I like that. But it is envisioned that we would issue debt in that period, and therefore having, again, slight increases over the course of that period allows us to maintain our reserve balances while still repaying that debt, and puts us in a good place from a bondholder's perspective and investor's perspective to buy those bonds. So that is the rationale for the 2% increase. And again, I would just welcome any questions that you might have.
pretty straightforward. I move approval of resolution number 1966, establishing new sewer service rates and repealing resolution number 1834.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor McKeel for the motion and Counselor Lopez for the second. Seeing no questions, Phyllis, roll call, please.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros,
Aye.
Counselor Oberst,
Yes.
Counselor Lopez,
Aye.
Counselor Carey,
Aye.
Counselor McKeel,
Yes.
Counselor Belts.
Well, yes. I've been trying to think of a sewer joke and, I think Madam Mayor just had it. I just can't-
Nothing's coming
can't
to the
read it.
pipeline, eh?
There's the sewer joke.
I don't
Well, the
All right. That resolution is
Dimensions,
passed, and
that's
we are
probably
moving on to water. Water.
Yes, okay. And in the water fund, as you know, we have experienced a 5.5% increase for the last 2 years. This is the third year that we're proposing a 5.5% increase. And that is premised on the rate study that we had by Gallardi back in fiscal 21. We are, as I've mentioned, I think now is a good time to mention it outside of budget committee. It's not in the staff report per se, but we have acquired some software called Waterworth that we hope will help illustrate better these rate increases over time and we can build scenarios with them based on our capital project forecasts, as well as any other things that we know are coming to fruition, such as COLAs and that kind of thing, and personnel costs. And so it's a very powerful forecasting tool, but it also has a really nice illustrative presentation package that will hopefully make consistent across all 4 of our utilities what you see and allow you to say, okay, well, if you were at a budget committee meeting to say, well, we really think, you need to do that sewer project you've been pushing out for 5 years. Now tell us what that would look like. It should be a very easy thing to illustrate. And so we're pretty excited about it, but sadly I may not get to implement it, but more fun for the next finance director.
come back anytime.
Right. So, so the 5.5%, again, just to let you know what that means in terms of our average residential customer, we'd be looking at roughly $1.56 monthly increase for a 1,000 square foot house, and a $2.82 per month increase for a larger 3,000 square foot home. And that assumes, of course, that you have more people in a 3,000 square foot home, because water usage is much more people oriented, but it's also very weather specific or weather driven. And so, there are years when we have predicted a 5.5% rate increase would get so much money, and then we have a very wet year and we don't end up needing water usage is down. And so we don't achieve the revenue levels that we had. And so that's part of the reason this nice smooth trajectory is really critical to the health of our fund. And the water fund has had problems in past years. As you know, we've been very fortunate to have urban renewal to help with, and ARPA in particular, for the water fund to help with some of those bigger projects. And so we will get those done, and then life will be good.
And then rely on.
Right. And you run into a year like this, on the other hand, when apparently summer started the 1st of May instead of the 1st of July. And I predict that water usage will be up this year. I've already started my drip system a month ago. So it's going to be the converse. And, when we look at our water fund, we weren't exactly expecting the need to drill another hole on the Marion County side and to have that project come at us all of a sudden. And, that's the kind of thing that the water fund has faced repeatedly, has been bad surprises, as we said with the kids when they'd fall down. That's a bad surprise. We've had a lot of bad surprises. So good job. Thank you for helping us through that.
Kudos to Russ Cooper, Public Works Director.
And the impetus for the study, getting an actual professional consultant to go through that to make very tough calls in raising prices like this. All right. Motion, anyone?
I move approval of resolution number 1967, establishing new water service rates and repealing resolution number 1944.
Thank you, Councillor Belts for the motion and Councillor Salinas Oliveros for the second. And seeing no additional discussion, Phyllis, resolution number 1967, roll call, please.
Counselor Lopez,
Aye.
Counselor Oberst,
Yes.
Counselor Carey,
Aye.
Counselor Belts,
Aye.
Counselor McKeel,
Yes.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Great, thank you very much. And one more, the new one we added, right, just to give you one.
Last but not least, the stormwater utility. As I mentioned earlier, we are looking at a 5% rate increase, which is just a little bit more than what was recommended at the beginning of the stormwater utility at this juncture for basic service level. However, it does reflect only a 66-cent per equivalent service unit. And that is largely because, again, we have not been able to make progress on some of the stormwater capital projects that we want without dedicated staffing. And so this helps us afford 50% of an additional stormwater technician. Our other utility techs will also and have been supporting the stormwater fund. But I think what Public Works Director Cooper is envisioning is that we will have more dedicated time to get some of those projects done. And he's also adjusted the attention that's being given by his operations managers and project manager to that fund to kind of bolster that as well. So that increase, again, it raises the monthly flat fee for your typical residential customer to $13.73 from $13.07, and so 66-cent increase. And for all of the same reasons that we're trying to do a smooth, gradual increase on these fees to maintain service levels, that is the basis of our recommendation.
And again, on that, when you mention the service level, Councillor Carey says, let's, Councillor Lopez talking about general fund service levels. We actually have had that discussion when we established the stormwater fee, right? We were given options. Do we have the high level of basic service level? Do we do a medium or do we do a basic? And we did choose to introduce it at a lower than recommended level by the experts. So trying to keep as prudent as we can, but yet deliver the services that people love in their stormwater, including that leaf removal, requires this review.
And I would add that we're learning how this fund works. We're only 3 years into or 2. And so we did shoot a little low to begin with, and we anticipated that there would need to be some increase on that. We'll need to be diligent about it, but because it is such a new fund, we're sort of finding our own level on that.
All right.
Are we ready for a motion? I move approval of resolution number 1968, establishing the stormwater utility fee service charge and repealing resolution number 1945.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Salinas Oliveros for the motion. Ooh, and Councillor Carey jumps in with the second. Seeing no additional discussion, Phyllis, please.
Counselor Carey,
Aye.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros,
Aye.
Counselor Oberst,
Yes.
Counselor Belts,
Yes.
Counselor Lopez,
Aye.
Counselor McKeel.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet.
Thank you, Janet.
Janet.
Woohoo!
Oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah, we probably have to make some adjustments to this year to get through this year.
Madam Mayor, I should just real quickly throw in, we've had nice budgets over the years. Janet's predecessor did a good job with this too, but these budgets we've had for the last few years have been very well constructed. The documents themselves are actually entertaining and photo illustrated for a change. It's not just column after column after column of numbers. And I feel like a very professional department got even more professional with Janet's involvement with our fair city. And thanks for coming up. It's been really great having you here and helping guide us through the running of Monmouth. Thanks.
Here, here.
All right, we'll move on to our last business item for council. The Urban Renewal Agency will meet in a few minutes and have a couple of things. Being an adoption of our noise ordinance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mayor and Council, tonight you have a second reading of proposed ordinance 1409 for consideration. Most of you recall and have been part of deliberations over the past probably 9 months or so and are aware of sort of what brought us to this point. And the hope with this proposed ordinance is to give our police department some better both enforcement tools and clarification of the code to provide more consistent enforcement of the noise provisions. What brought us here was amplified noise and amplified music, but the changes that we're putting in place or that are proposed in this ordinance creates a definition of unnecessary noise or defines what unreasonably loud or raucous noise constitutes and how that will be determined using decibel level measurements. So the ordinance includes proximity, land use, time of day, and duration provisions by which someone in the police department who'd be responding to a noise complaint would be able to measure the noise. And I think that you heard from Chief Haynes in prior presentations about the hope is always to gain compliance through working, on a complaint basis and with the noise generating activity. And so that's the first activity that the police department would engage in. But the purpose of this ordinance is to put some better tools in place for the police department to respond to noise complaints. And with that, you had first reading at your last, now I'm backing up to at your May 16th meeting, you had first reading on the ordinance. And I'd entertain any questions.
So I have one quick question, and that is, we got a comment tonight about raucous noise from exhaust systems. I hear it all over town. I hear 2 motorcycles accelerating out of town every night at 6 o'clock. I figure it's the same too. Does this address that? Does this give the Monmouth PD authority to stop somebody with a tuned exhaust system and say,
well, the provisions that we drafted, yes, I understand. So Chief Haynes is on, and I'd like to ask him to speak to practically what can be done about the situation we heard from our public commenter. But to answer your question, we didn't draft ordinance 1409 with the muffler issues or some other motor vehicle, issues that have been raised in mind.
Okay.
And I think one of those is duration.
Yeah.
Right. No, exactly.
That's one of our
they would have
key-
to fit within the criteria in 06140, and that's going to be factually based, depending on duration, time of day, those kind of factors. And it may just be, if it's a loud burst and it's short duration, it may be hard to enforce under this.
Okay.
And maybe Chief Haynes has a comment about that situation too.
Yeah, all I would add is that really those issues are addressed in the vehicle code, and that's dependent on where our officers at the time. And if they witness a violation, they can make a stop for it and give a warning or issue a citation. But this ordinance doesn't necessarily address that, but that's already addressed in the vehicle code.
Okay,
Oh,
good.
thank
Thank you.
There you go. Thank you.
And then the comment I would like to make, I read through this ordinance. It's a fabulous piece of work. I do have just a little bit of concern that it does not directly address my main concern, which is the interaction between downtown and the outdoor stage at the university. You know, I've said this to, I know, to Lane and to Marty. The government doesn't do regulation for the fun of it. It usually is the result of some problem needing to be solved. And we had a problem that needed to be solved. Asking nicely didn't do the trick. And so the result is that we have had to up our regulation of noise in town. If this doesn't do everything it needs to do, it can easily be revisited and tuned up, which is why I don't have heartburn about saying, let's do this. And if in fact it doesn't completely solve all the problems that we've been having, we can revisit it. So, but good work. Thanks. And Chief, you know, this is a good piece of legislation.
Councillor Terry.
I have just a couple questions, and this would be, Chief, for you. How do you anticipate, or how would you plan to enforce this? Let's say we've got and it's not anything that's different, but let's say we've got the problem where we've had that the neighbor is complaining about the Dry Town Tap House, you know, music that's being played after 10 o'clock, even before 10 o'clock. And you go up and ascertain or determine that it's probably nuisance noise, either with your sound monitor or just, you know, with your own ears. How do we deal with that? Do we go in and assuming that the negotiation doesn't work, do you come back the next morning and write them a ticket? Do you go in and unplug the amps? Yeah, I just don't know. I mean, I that's why I'm not a police officer, and I'm glad you are.
Yeah, we can't go in and necessarily unplug the amp or anything like that. But really, the way that I foresee this, I guess, being in effect would be that we would get a complaint and we would go down there with our decibel reader, and we would take a measurement from the property line, and we would see if they truly were in violation. We would let them know there was a complaint. We would let them know that they were in violation. We'd give them an opportunity, you know, period of time to comply with that. And that would be a choice that they would have. And if they didn't comply with that in a reasonable amount of time, and we'll just say it's, you know, 10 or 15 minutes. I mean, I'm just kind of throwing that out there subjectively, but we would go back and we'd issue a citation.
Okay. I think that, yeah, that's good sort of community policing that makes good sense. Now, and we've got the, you know, the decibel deal that's calibrated and all that, and I read all the specifications. Councilor Lopez's suggestion, I downloaded you know, a deal on the iPhone, and it is not calibrated and probably not very accurate. But one of the things that I noticed right away, because I did a bit of testing on it, you know, I'll pop up above a level, you know, that, you know, you'll get to the crescendo about, you know, may pop over it for 2 or 3 notes and then you're back down. At what point have you violated and gone over the allowable decibels? And for how long?
This is something I talked about with the city manager, and I think that we need a device, and I actually have one of our sergeants that is in charge of researching this and making sure that we get the right one. But I think that we want one that's capable of really measuring over a period of time, you know, to take really what the average is, because I think it's not necessarily fair to just say, take a snapshot at any given point, because you can kind of make that what it is. And so I think we need something that, again, reads something over a period of time. 1 to 3 minutes, I think, is kind of a standard on some of these devices that we can use and say, hey, we took our reading and this is how long we took it. Here was the average decibel limit or decibel levels from that. And then we can enforce based off that.
Well, in your response, you averaged about 62. So you're okay.
We should have told you that you were being measured.
Parent app, though.
Oh,
But of course, he's,
Recommended by OSHA.
he's being amplified. Should we go unplug his amplifier?
Oh, gosh.
Yes, Director Duffner, however, would be much quieter if she was doing this.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Any additional questions for Marty or for the chief or for Lane, who all had a piece of this one?
I'm ready for I move to adopt ordinance 1409, amending Monmouth City Code sections 8.05.140 and 8.05.150, and adopting new provisions relating to unnecessary noise.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor McKeel, for the motion, and Counselor
Yeah, what level was that? Yeah.
or the second. Any
I'm
comment?
third. I'm excited to have this piece of legislation in place. Obviously, it's overdue. So good.
Phyllis, could you please talk over Counselor Oberst and take the roll call?
Oh,
Sure. Counselor Lopez,
Aye.
Counselor McKeel,
Yes.
Counselor Belts,
Yes.
Counselor Oberst,
yes.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros,
Aye.
Counselor Carey.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
I was over allowable noise downtown. Think of that.
Thank you very much. All right.
Thank you, Phil.
I would like to at this time then, just head right into our reports if folks don't mind. I mean, I think we
absolutely.
might normally take a little break, but I think we're pretty close here. So I would like to report that obviously we've all been busy. We've all been, as Counselor Carey pointed out, we wanted community engagement. That's one of our goals, and we're getting it. So I hope that we all are taking time to be thoughtful in conversations with folks. As you can see, if you do receive particularly written comments regarding any issue, best practice would be to go ahead, forward it to Phyllis Bowman, who will then share it with the rest of us, so we all have an opportunity to see those comments. And I know we're all reading them. I know we're all taking things into consideration, right? I'll let you know on this topic, Marty, Suzanne, and I met today, and the city will be preparing a couple of things, our own FAQ, things we know and things we don't. Many of the things we don't know are because those questions really need to be asked of people who are in a decision point that we are not yet in. So we'll be preparing that, taking all of the comments that have been collected before to create sort of an FAQ. We also want to prepare, and although time is short potentially, a decision matrix. Folks want to know, when will decisions be made and what goes into those decisions. So I think we're preparing some things like that as well, just to let you all know. Really appreciate all the great community events we've had since our last council meeting. I absolutely adored the Peacock Festival. It was really an amazing day on Saturday as we celebrated Monmouth Pride. And nice weather helps, but these kind of community events, bringing people out, bringing people together, so much cooperation with particularly our students at Western and students at Central School District. We've had a lot of great events recently. So tough times, great times, and no more budget hearings for any of us, which is really nice. And that's all I have. Do we have reports? Oh, I do. I have one more. Counselor Oberst mentioned the Parks and Rec grants, or Counselor Lopez, perhaps, the Parks and Rec grants this year. And you did not mention one. This year, a second-year event received a grant, Chess in the Park. And that was an event that was started last year by a young Central High School student. He is continuing that and applied for a Parks and Rec grant. So just so you know, it's not all about fun runs. So Fest in the Park will be every Saturday, July 1st to July 29th from noon to 2.
To correct the record, I believe I had presented that at a previous meeting, and these second round was the second round of
perhaps.
presentation.
I'm sorry, and I did not realize. You're right. That could be. So
And say those, the time frame and
you betcha. Every Saturday in Main Street Park from 12 to 2. Chessboards are provided. The picnic tables will be set up. They have some opportunities for different kinds of play, and folks who are not chess players are welcome to come and be tutored.
chess players.
All right, reports of boards and commission meetings. I'll give Councilor Salinas Oliveros and Councilor Oberst.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So the Arts and Culture Commission, we met on the 31st. We had some commissioners who were not able to show up on the regular time. And so some exciting things that are happening. Of course, 4th of July is the biggest event that Arts and Culture is setting up. But we had some great news. We're making connections with Central High School students and got some nice responses from the vice principal and others of student volunteers. So Central High School students have, let's see, this year seniors needed to do 10 years of service hour, or 10 hours of service hours. Next year it's going to be 20, then it's going to be 30, and then it's going to be 40. And students can complete their service hours with the city for if it's a community event, if it's something else that needs to be done, as long as the high school has kind of like a job description of what, who the contact is, how many hours, what exactly would they be doing, and students can count it towards their service hours. And all they would need is a sign off of how many hours and what they did on their little service hours form. And so I think that could be a really great partnership. And we had our commissioners, they came up with a really nice job description, and that was sent off and shared with Central High School students. So we're hoping that we have some high school students volunteer for our 4th of July celebration and help out in many ways. So it's an exciting partnership, and they were excited to receive it and exciting to hear more of ways that students can be involved with the city in a volunteer capacity. So that was exciting. And then we also had a group of our commissioners go to the Western Oregon University Art Show to pick out a piece. I have yet to see it, so I'm excited to see it. And so they had some really great artwork to choose from. Many of the artwork was purchased, but they got over there as soon as they could, and very pleased with what they chose. Then we did talk about some artist talks for, I believe, October 7th, October 7th, Dr. Barbara will be presenting and doing an artist talk in the library. So this is a collaboration with the library. And then we do have the president of the AEP, the survey that we've been conducting. He's going to come to Monmouth in November 7th at noon. And it's something that I believe our own Phyllis Bowman, who reached out, 500 surveys. And so we're pretty proud of that. And he's making a stop here at the
That's very cool.
That's pretty cool.
Pretty exciting. Yeah, really exciting. And so, and our experience has been, most people have been really open and friendly about filling out those surveys, whether it was on paper or using the QR code. I did get to hear some of the peacock calling when I was there for the surveys, and it said number 13-1. Yes. So that was fun.
I wonder what the decibel levels were on this.
I know.
Oh.
Well, I was kind of in the back. It was probably high. It was high because I could hear
It was momentary. It was just
Yeah, right.
So that was fun. And then we
Here's
had
the
some
real
great
thing.
participation
Gracious
also
time of day.
with the AAIP celebration as well. And they were
Oh.
very gracious about just filling out that survey and wanting more of these events coming to Monmouth. So really great participation. Gosh, we have a lot of vendors for 4th of July. And I don't know if we're putting like the stops on it. There's a hat show on the 3rd, I believe. Mayor Coons and I will be judging the fashion trash and hat show. So make a hat. Be in the
I need someone to make me a hat so I can, yes, have a recycled trash hat.
Yes, something very cool. So just a lot happening and a lot of work happening at the Arts and Culture Commission. Oh, and there is one last thing. We were approached by the Historic Commission for a possible collaboration for a mural at the Firehouse CrossFit. So Firehouse CrossFit was one of the possible sites for the Historic Commission mural.
Yeah.
They were very gracious and said yes, and then we decided on PCL. And they would like to procure some funds and do a mural really showing the history of how that building has been used throughout being here in the community. So we're still exploring that. We'll probably discuss that more in future meetings, but that will hopefully be a really nice collaboration. I know Ms. Duffner wasn't able to come to our last meeting, and so hopefully we'll get more information in our next meetings.
Very cool.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Yes.
You know, one of the things I saw, either television or I think it was television, City of Hillsborough is doing some murals, but they're not painted on the wall. They're affixed.
Oh, okay.
Like the one at Marketplace.
That can be, and they might even be,
Oh, like mobile. Like
yeah, they'd be mobile. And so they could be moved around. They could be seasonal. I don't know what I'll dig that out and get
sounds like
information.
fun.
So you don't have to look for it. But I will do that because I thought, well, gee, that's a good idea. And it's far less labor intensive. I'm guessing
Be a
more
nice
cost
walking tour.
effective,
Yeah. Yeah.
and could be rotated.
Yeah.
So I'll track that.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Councilor Oberst.
Traffic safety. Russ reports that he's working on the scope of work with the folks that are going to help with the TSP. So inching towards that. We had a request in the Maria Catherine Court Stephanie intersection for some kind of, maybe gee whiz, is it a little dangerous down there because people are coming and going and there's no stop signs. And the conclusion is it's not really suitable for a stop sign. However, we're going to look at the we're going to look at the radar trailer and the data collector down there. Broadway Avenue, the new neighborhood off of Hoffman, had a request for speed signs. It's a local street. Local streets don't get speed signs. Radar trailer and data collector. Edwards Road speed signs. Edwards Road at a local street doesn't get speed signs. However, Russ says it should really be the collector. Maybe in the
now.
UTSP it will become a collector, at which point it will qualify for speed signs. Meanwhile, radar trailer and traffic data collector. Gwynn and Martin a request for a four-way stop. Too close to the Gwynn Edwards four-way stop. Besides, Heffley has higher traffic meeting Gwynn, and it's the one that connects through to Main Street. So if there is to be a four-way stop, three-way stop, it would be at that intersection and probably not until Gwynn extends to the west. So that one's out there. The most exciting is we have a bike rodeo coming on July 21st, 9 to noon in Madrona Park. And this includes a parks grant from our own parks department to help fund the purchase of helmets and a little reward for the person presenting the bike rodeo. And there's been donations of other helmets. Salem Health was one that was specifically mentioned as having donated some helmets. So I'm looking forward to that. There are going to be a whole lot of other service providers besides just the bike rodeo that parents might want to talk to and so on. So this should be, it's more than just a bike rodeo. I urge people to show up again, July 21st, 9 to noon, Madrona.
Madrona Park.
Madrona Park. Yes, thank you. And As you may recall, the mayor asked me to look into, gee whiz, is the Traffic Safety Commission set to be a little bit more of a transportation commission? And so I've been kind of tiptoeing through this. I talked to our 2 staff members who are most directly involved, Russ and Chief. I talked to the commission. They were supportive. I talked to Marty. She was supportive. I talked to all of you all. You were supportive. And then one thing after another happened, and I didn't get back to it for a while. I got back to it. I've sent my ideas to Marty. I've sent my ideas to Russ and Chief. We may, our next Transportation Safety Commission meeting is set for September. We may have one sooner so the commission can have a look at it. If at that point, if it would go to you, Lane, and or Phyllis to massage it into shape. I just used the existing traffic safety ordinance and changed the language, added a couple of sections and so on. It's not a huge change, but I'll let you know about that. July 18th, traffic safety will be here to give the annual presentation to council, and that's it.
Cool, thank you. Councilor Belts.
So I made the mistake of putting on my calendar that the senior board meeting would be like the last whatever of the month. And of course, last month there were 5 weeks. And so I was a week late for the meeting, but I showed up here. However, what the senior board has been doing is working on this AARP age-friendly community designation. And so today, I believe in this very room, this very building, there was the first of 3 planned community forums, and the forum was about what it means to be an age-friendly community. And this forum focused on communication and information and health services. There will be 2 others. The next forum will be in the City of Independence. And from the pictures, it looks like it was well attended. So thank you. That's all.
That's interesting. And that is a topic at the Oregon Mayors Association conference this year. So I'll be getting additional information from other small communities.
And I wasn't able to attend that because I was attending the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments executive leadership meeting. So planning our next board meeting.
Yeah.
Overlapping meetings.
Yeah, the meetings of the meeting.
Our life.
Other boards and commissions.
Planning Commission meets tomorrow at just a relatively minor agenda. They're going to consider an expansion of the parking lot at the Ron Wilson Center, the
new
building. So
Be forewarned, there is word on the street for people to attend that meeting. People are being encouraged to attend that meeting to give public testimony about the potential micro housing project, just so you know.
All right, that takes us to a report by Marty Wine, our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I don't have much to report. And actually, the one thing I had planned to report, the mayor just reported on, which is we thank you for attending and listening at our town hall meeting this past weekend. We are compiling the questions and comments from all the speakers who attended. I made a commitment. I wanted to say 2 things about what happened at the town hall near the end. I made a commitment to the folks who were asking questions that the city would be willing to be in a clearinghouse role to try to help get answers to questions, and where it related to something having to do with the city, with city business or city process, that we try to answer those questions. Another statement that the mayor made at the end of the town hall, I think in an effort to encourage people to know that we were tracking with what was happening with that potential proposal, was that I was meeting weekly with the project partners. And I just want to make sure there's not a misunderstanding about what those meetings are or about, and they are about communication coordination. So my effort to meet with the project partners is just to understand what's going on, and so that we have an understanding of what we might be receiving if an application comes in. So I just thought it would be worth it to clarify, because I've been asked since that meeting what those meetings are all about. I wanted to make sure you were not also wondering. Let's see. A couple other things that are coming your way on future agendas. One of the things that we have an effort underway across all of the departments, and with our city recorder at the lead of it, is to put together what we're calling a master fees and charges schedule. So we have multiple resolutions that put our city fees and charges in to place. And when you are adopting them, we're wanting to put them all in one consolidated schedule so that if anybody wants to know how much we charge for copying or system development charges or the various things that we charge fees for, you'll be able to see that in one place, and also the basis on which those change. So that's going to be a little different than the way we've been doing it, one resolution at a time, but just wanted you to know that that's coming forward soon. Hearing about the Arts and Culture Commission report reminded me that the City Hall project is underway, and I've had some questions about how we'll be either acquiring, displaying, curating, or otherwise incorporating art into our City Hall project. And it's our hope to engage the Arts and Culture Commission members of the community, maybe with an advisory committee, and invite those of you who have ideas to start bringing those ideas forward so we can make them work in our new building. And finally, on the City Hall project, we're looking at marrying up a Friday afternoon ice cream social that the Senior Center usually does with our next walkthrough of the building. So sometime on a Friday afternoon in July, we'll invite every community and everyone to come take another walkthrough. And that's a project milestone. I don't have a date yet because it'll either be, it'll be one of
And in general, to myself.
one of the Fridays afternoons in July. So, and at that point, the interior of the building, and they call it a dry out. I'm learning all these things about how construction is viewed on a new building, but it means the drywall, the interior finishes will have been enclosed. And so it'll be a safer place for people to be able to walk through. So we're coming up on another chance to walk through our up and coming building. And that's all I've got for today.
Yes, Councillor Carey.
So you're meeting then with representatives of Church in the Park and
The project partners include Church at the Park, Christ Church, Polk County, Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance, and Community Action staff.
all of those are connected with the
They are,
project.
yes, that's correct. So
Who's making the decisions?
there are no decisions being made in these meetings. So
Right, but
Oh.
but of those,
Oh.
who will make the decision
So
as to whether to move forward and how?
Church at the Park is the property owner, or I'm sorry, Christ's Church is the
Yeah.
property owner, and Church at the Park is the project partner providing the shelter. And we're at a moment where Christ Church is in the lead to make a decision about whether to move forward. They have several decision points that they are trying to work through. And so together with Church at the Park, they would decide together to move forward.
And that would entail, as we've mentioned many times, approaching the city through one of two means to have the shelter project approved. So,
You know, they would, and they can, that group can set their own course, but I think a lot of things, I mean, there's a lot of speculation running around
Understand.
and truth, half truth. I've been looking, you know, all weekend for that van that's dropping people off under the
Yeah.
Independence Bridge and directing them this way, and I haven't seen any.
Saw you out there that morning.
I've been looking. But, you know, there's a lot of that kind of stuff. So the quicker we can get some definitive information, understanding that some of it is going to have to be confidential because there's negotiations. But it would make everybody's life easier,
Agreed.
including the church, both churches.
Yes.
all right. Other, yes, council comments or announcements?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have two brief comments. The first is that I was quite proud to go and cook north of 200 hot dogs at Pride.
And also Councilor Salinas Oliveros is like good picnic
It
people
was
here.
really, it was an
Sorry to
honor to
interrupt you.
serve.
You're fine. You're fine.
So,
And
and
I-
it was an honor to just invite people because it was a free lunch, and sometimes they didn't know that, and you would see them stand around. It's like, no, it's free, and just how happy they were when you just invited them over to come and eat with. So that was really fun.
And this is the Pride picnic that we had.
Well, and I'm
Sorry,
pretty
Kate.
sure, yes, you are. I'm pretty sure I smell like hot dogs for the week since. But that's okay. I also wanted to take a brief moment just to read a couple of words that are listed at the head of our agenda. And those are that Monmouth, Oregon is located within the traditional homeland of the Lucky-Mute Band of Kalapuya. Following the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855, Kalapuya people were forcibly removed to the reservations in Western Oregon. Today, living descendants of these people are part of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians. It's been a little while since that's been read, and wanted to make certain that it was on the record. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Belts and then Councillor Oberst.
While it feels like it's been 50 years since it happened, I did want to thank everybody who came out for the Peacock Festival. It exceeded my expectations by a significant amount. It took me a week or so to actually get my sleep pattern back and to, but there's lots of talk of what they're calling PF24. There's lots of excitement. There's lots of great ideas. I really appreciated seeing all of you out there, folks that sat down. John, I apologize. I know you were there and you were talking with my husband and I was running around like a peacock with no head.
I was
And-
keeping him out of your hair.
Thank you. But thank you, everybody. Especially thank you, Mayor Coons, for coming and judging the Peacock Calling Contest. That was a resounding success. I've gotten 70 responses from the survey I sent out. People were absolutely thrilled with it. That was definitely one of the highlights, and we will definitely repeat that. Thank you.
Well, upcoming is Juneteenth, Freedom Day. We're going to have a celebration in the Main Street Park Amphitheater, June 19th, 7 to 8 p.m. Our honorable mayor will give an address. We have Mike Wilson, who's faculty at Western Oregon University in the psychology department. Pastor Frank Morris is also going to talk. And we're kind of keeping fingers crossed. Maya Hopwood, who is the president of the Western Black Student Union, we're hoping she can come, but she also has 2 other graduation speeches that she has to make. So we might not get her, but we have our fingers crossed. So it should be a good event to come and celebrate what many people think of as their 4th of July.
And speaking of commencement, Saturday, the 17th, we will, Western returns to its full commencement. The last few years, they've been doing the smaller groups, and this will be a full-on day of families and proud parents and excited graduates and pomp and the circumstance, and it's probably going to be loud, so I don't know how the band.
Well, John's got his.
The ordinance won't be in effect yet.
The ordinance will not be in effect yet. I'll tell the band director he can play that dang song over and over and over. Yes.
First of all, to tag off of Carol, the Buffalo Soldiers film that we as a city supported is on PBS this month.
Oh.
I can't for the life of me tell you the day, but it's going to be right around the 19th, I think. I got the PBS OPB mailer last week, and there it was on the cover, and then I promptly can't tell you the date. So check with OPB's website, and I bet you can find it. My spouse and I had a nice little trip down to San Francisco, and I want to report that while the cable cars are cuter than our trolley, they don't ride near as smooth. And while their trolleys are pretty cool, they're nowhere because they're on steel rails and steel.
Or as cost effective.
Yeah, right. There you go. And so that was great fun. On a more serious note, returning to Saturday's gathering, it was amazing the level of respect that people showed each other right up to the end. And this goes back to Marty, your comment about frequently asked questions from the city. When the word quasi-judicial came up, some circuits blew because people don't know what that means.
Yeah.
And I just think it's really incumbent upon us as part of frequently asked questions to explain to people how the land use process works. Remember the ALF film that I was involved in that was people both urban and rural. This was one of those places where the urban-rural divide goes away. We're all frustrated with the land use process, okay? And we need to spell out to people that if this comes to planning and or council as a quasi-judicial action, what that means, and that we have a ordinance that tells about zone changes, for example, and the criteria that apply. And we have got to make sure people understand that those are the criteria that we can consider, and we can't consider criteria that are not on the list. And, you know, make sure that folks who come in to comment to planning or to us understand that piece of the process, because that's where it falls apart. That's where people get frustrated. They don't understand how that works. And so please, you know, as you go into that FAQ, be sure we explain a little bit in general terms.
Call order
you
for
know.
an FAQ.
Yeah, at a fairly simplistic level, how that works. That's all.
Thank you for that. And I think that Director Duffner and I are working now to ensure that we have for the council clarification about what that decision matrix may look like for
Right.
both paths we've been talking about.
Yeah.
And yes, we'd like to be able to also convey it to the community in understandable terms. But I just want you all to know that we've used a couple of terms interchangeably that we need to sort out, so you're all clear about what your decision path will look like.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a reminder that a zone change is not a land use decision at first, but it could eventually become.
June 12th at 10, Buffalo Soldiers. My
Oh,
colleague
great.
looked it up for me. Thank you.
Oh, all right. And again, in the interest of being able to finish up without a break, if we can,
Yep.
Do it.
Yeah, go for it.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn the city council.
So moved.
And all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. So right away, we're going to become, I'll switch hats. We are,
Never.
and now
No, we're happy now.
You're invited to come back and come visit.
I would like to call to order the Tuesday, June 6th meeting of the Monmouth Urban Renewal Agency and ask Phyllis Bowman to call the roll call of board members.
Ms. Belts,
Here.
Mr. Carey,
Here.
Mr. Lopez,
Here.
Ms. McKeel,
Here.
Mr. Oberst,
Here.
Ms. Salinas Oliveros,
Here.
Ms. Kuntz.
I am present, and our first item of business is citizen comments. We don't have anyone left in the room for that. Did
Started talking
anyone?
budget, they all left.
Yeah,
That was
right.
great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did we get any public comments submitted to Phyllis for this? I'm going with no. All right.
We did not, Mayor Kuntz.
Thank
Or
you.
Chairwoman
Yeah,
Kuntz.
chair, whatever. So the consent calendar, the last time we met was May 2nd. That was the brief meeting that, well, actually, we have two. We have the minutes before the board meeting, and we already approved those. So yes, the minutes of May 2nd, which were included in your packet.
Move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Oberst, and second, Mr. Lopez. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you very much. And then we have our business this evening, which is a hearing on the budget. We'll start with the staff report.
Thank you, Ms. Kuntz and other members of
Could
the
you read
agency.
The whole thing for us, please.
Would you like me to?
No.
I don't think we can
No.
go as fast as we've been going.
No.
It is a very short budget. It is like only 7 pages long. So,
Right.
however, it is packed with interesting facts and data. And it totals on a balanced basis, $7,286,690. And this is a reflection of the tax increment financing as well as the current debt issuance that we are using to fund some very worthwhile projects in the urban renewal. And we have a plan to continue spending thanks to our substantial amendment, which was one of the major accomplishments this year. You have before you a budget that I would welcome any questions on. And we have a public hearing as well.
Well, yep, we'll ask staff questions first and then open the public hearing. I would like to declare open the public hearing for the fiscal year 2023-24 Monmouth Urban Renewal Agency proposed budget.
Nobody to speak in favor, nobody to speak against.
So seeing no comment, we'll close the public hearing. And again, any comments or there is a motion?
I'm ready. I move adoption of resolution number 43, adopting the fiscal year 23 to 24 budget, making appropriations and declaration of tax increment.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. McKeel for the motion and Ms. Leos Oliveros for the second. And roll call, please, Phyllis.
Ms. Belts,
Aye.
Mr. Carey,
Aye.
Ms. McKeel,
Yes.
Mr. Lopez,
Aye.
Mr. Oberst,
Aye.
Ms. Salinas Oliveros.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
All right. And that concludes our business and our budget presentation by Janet Chenard. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Yeah.
All right. All in favor,
he said.
signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, nicely done.
At least they have fun with it, right?
Yeah.